العدوان البريطاني الغاشم الذي يقوم على اليمن هو بسبب وقوف الشعب اليمني إلى جانب غزة وإلى جانب الشعب الفلسطيني المقاوم، ولذا يقوم باستهدافنا وبضربنا، لأن كل الشعوب العربية خذلت فلسطين وخذلت الأمة الإسلامية، ونحن بوقوفنا وصمودنا مع فلسطين يقوم باستهدافنا العدوان الغاشم.
موقفنا لا زال ثابت ومبدئي بأننا سنقف مع إخواننا في فلسطين وفي غزة حتى يتم النصر وحتى يتم تحرير كل الأراضي الفلسطينية، وليس غزة فقط، تحرير كل الأراضي الفلسطينية من دنس الاحتلال الإسرائيلي، وهذا واجب ديني ومبدئي وأخلاقي بالنسبة لنا في اليمن.
Okay, so for today's video, I want to talk about what happened a few days ago with the US and the UK attacking Yemen in some sort of retaliation to the Yemen militants, I believe the Houthis, going in and since, the past few months, intercepting and interfering with cargo ships that are coming to Israel through the Red Sea. And as you could see from the opening clip there, the people of Yemen are not happy, and they vow to bring down severe punishment to the US and the UK now because of this attack on them. And they say they are fully backing Palestine now, especially with everything that's happening in Gaza. And we're even seeing some protests now on the streets, defending Yemen, saying leave Yemen alone. But the interesting thing that I want to talk about for today is the aspect of the Islamic religion and the outlooks of that, which ties into the second gentleman in that first clip, saying at the end there, this is a religious and moral duty that they have to uphold. With that being said, I'm going to be playing a few clips today, and the first clip is from an individual who I believe was born in Yemen, grew up in Yemen, was very much in the Islamic religion and world and everything, and this is his view on what's going on.
The effects of this war have also been seen in European capitals, with pro-Islamist groups and radical new migrants marching in the streets oftentimes in the hundreds of thousands against Israel and bringing the Middle East conflicts to the streets of the Western world, even as moderate Muslims say that these movements cannot necessarily be negotiated with and will pose a major threat to the West moving forward. We are joined now by Luai Ahmed, a columnist as well as influencer and presenter at the Builders of the Middle East. Thank you very much, Luai, for being with us. I'm glad we have a good working connection this time. I want to address the religious angle of this conflict first. Can this truly be said to be a conflict only on religious grounds?
I don't think you can paint it all as a religious conflict, because it is also a political conflict, but religion is at the forefront of this conflict, because what many people in the West don't understand is that Islam is the system, it is life, it is the system that indoctrinates and permeates every single understanding of life in the Middle East. So when I studied, when I went to school in Yemen, for example, the vast majority of what I learned in school was about Prophet Muhammad, how Islam teaches us to live, how life in every single way should be dictated by Islamic and Quranic thought. And there is no room for any secular thought. There is no room for adapting to or evolving into the modern civilization that we live in the West. So it is primarily a religious conflict, and religion is at the forefront of every single line in the Middle East. And this is also a part of the life that many Muslims and people who have migrated to the West believe in. So 30 out of 31 mosques in Sweden believe that you should not be able to criticize Islam whatsoever. It should be banned to criticize Islam. And that just comes to show that majority of Muslims who move to the West do not adhere to the values and the belief systems of the West. In fact, they want to change the West. They want the West to become more like the Middle East, to become more Islamic. Many Muslims say that they're not happy in the West, and they want the West to become more like the the Middle East. And that is a problem that Muslims themselves and Arabs and immigrants have to fight back against, because many of the people who flee these countries do not understand that the Islamic system is one of the reasons that the Middle East looks the way it is. It is why we run away from the Middle East, so to speak.
Now, right at the end there, where he's talking about Muslims who go to the West and are unhappy and they want to make it more like the West or more like the Middle East, made me think of this video that I'm about to show you, that I came across when there's been a bit of a trend where people keep posting why I'm leaving Canada, why I'm leaving Toronto, why I'm moving out of Canada, stuff like that. Whether, you know, it be economic or they can't afford housing or there is no housing, etc., etc. This couple stated 5 reasons why they were leaving, and this was their 3rd reason. Take a look.
Reason number 3
is there's no Islamic environment in Canada. Now, I will preface that statement by saying there are certainly certain locations within Canada where there is a high amount of Muslims living. But what we mean by Islamic environment is that in certain countries, again, we've traveled to a few different Muslim countries, that when you go there, you hear the adhan, the call to prayer 5 times a day. It's playing on the loudspeakers. That constant reminder. Whether you're in the mall in Dubai or Malaysia or wherever you are, you hear the adhan go off.
Everybody goes to pray.
But there's somewhere to pray.
You have accessibility to go and pray. Like,
absolutely.
Right now we struggle when we're out and about. We have to, you know, pray in parking lots. We have to pray in places that aren't clean. Like it's just not an easy way to practice being a Muslim. And not just that, but like accessibility of halal food, being close to a masjid. Like there's so many things.
Listen, you're free to practice whatever you want to practice, believe in whatever you want to believe, but you're in Canada, a non-Muslim country, so to be complaining about there not being a strong Islamic presence is kind of weird, especially then when you go on to compare when you've traveled to Muslim countries and how they have it laid out or prepared for people who are Muslim and practice the Muslim faith, how readily available it is and how convenient it is. Yeah, you've moved out of the Middle East. You've come to a Western country. There might be some, you know, assimilation that's expected. There's definitely gonna be inconveniences in regards to your particular, you know, practice or belief, I guess. Definitely might not be a lot of halal places, but again, if you know that you gotta pray, you know, a certain amount of times a day, wouldn't you want to get yourself into a place where you're not doing it in a parking lot or in somewhere that's dirty? Now, obviously, I understand that is more difficult when there isn't as many availabilities, places for the convenience of prayer. But again, you're not in the Middle East anymore or a Middle Eastern country. You've moved to Canada. So then to be complaining about that kind of stuff is kind of strange to me. But again, this ties back into what the previous gentleman, Luai, was talking about, how the people who are coming to Western countries are unhappy, and they're saying it's not like the Middle East. Well, yeah, no duh, it's not the Middle East. But I want to go back to Luai because he starts to talk about the migration and integration of Middle Eastern people in the West and, you know, potential issues that will arise.
Luai, in many ways, you're echoing what many geopolitical thinkers have called the clash of civilizations. The idea that radical Islam is on a collision course with Western liberalism and that we're going to see this clash play out in the streets of Western nations in the most catastrophic ways imaginable. Do you believe such a clash is something that can still be averted?
Ariel, when Rasmus Paludan burned the Quran, when Salwan Momsky burned the Quran in Sweden, we had hundreds, if not thousands, of Muslims going out and turning Sweden upside down, burning hundreds of cars, burning neighborhoods, trying to kill more than 500 police officers because they do not want people to burn the book of Islam. And that is a major clash because in Sweden, you have to have freedom of expression. Freedom of expression and freedom of speech are the main building blocks of Western civilization and Swedish civilization. In Sweden, you can say anything. You can criticize any idea. You can scrutinize religion. You can examine all historical concepts. Anything can happen in Sweden regarding that, and that is the way that it has been for a very long time. After the Islamic migration happened, that has changed now. The Swedish society, the Swedish police, Swedish politics, Swedish politicians are in panic mode because they did not know, or they did not realize, that the vast majority of the people who have moved to the West are not going to change just by setting their foot in Sweden. They're going to continue believing in the same ideologies and the same concepts in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq. So the clash of civilizations is very detrimental to the West, to Sweden, to the Netherlands, to the UK, and we will not be able to avoid this if we do not have an honest and open discussion about the threat that comes from Islamic migration. If we do not talk about how the integration courses and the integration projects that Sweden and other European countries have been completely unsuccessful, that there needs to be another alternative in the West to countering this. And in my belief, nationalism is great. We need more nationalism in Sweden and in the West and in Europe, because what we're not facing Teletubbies who are just trying to make us change our values. We're facing people who want to slit our throats if we criticize their ideology, if we criticize their prophet. These are not Teletubbies. These are people who literally want to kill us for basic human rights, for basic understandings of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So I do believe nationalism is very important in the West, because we have to know that what we're fighting for in Sweden and Britain and America are things that Westerners have fought for generations and for centuries, and we cannot just let them, crawl back and take a backseat just because there are people here who do not accept them. If the people who do not accept these values come to the West, they need to get out. They cannot continue to live and try to change the mindsets and the politics and the laws of the countries that they move to. Just like if a bunch of Swedes moved to Yemen or Saudi Arabia and started gay clubs and just tried to sell bacon, so the governments there are not going to accept them. They're going to, I would hope that they would just deport them, but I believe worse things would happen.
And you know what? I agree with him. We do need more nationalism in this country, because just the other day there was a video taken here in Canada, in particular the GTA, of a place called Brampton, very big population, South Asian people right there, Sikhs, Pakistanis, Punjabis, stuff like that. And they were asked, what is it that you like about Brampton? And they said it reminds them of where they came from. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't leave a place to go to another place that reminds me of the place that I just left. Like, I didn't leave Portugal to come to Canada because Canada reminds me of Portugal. So, like, this mentality or this way of thinking is kind of weird. I would assume that you're trying to leave that place for a particular reason. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to give up all of your beliefs and your faith and your practices and all that. But again, some assimilation needs to be happening. Like, I can't go over to, say, Yemen and open up any kind of shop that I want that would go against their religion or their beliefs. But they can come here and do exactly that. They could open a halal shop if they wanted. They could open up any other kind of place that they wanted, any kind of business, store, enterprise, whatever they wanted. They could do that here, no problem. And this point flows into the last video clip that I'm going to be playing with Douglas Murray when he was at Qatar having a debate about immigration a few years ago.
Because much of your argument, Douglas, seems to be about the us versus them, the fact that, we have our own values, our own Britishness, our own virtues, and they will come to our shores with their values, their traditions. You seem to almost suggest that they come to your countries with a lesser breed of values.
No, I don't think I said that at any point, and that's another time you've tried to put something in my mouth.
So when you talk about the difference in values, what do you suggest?
Look, first of all, I didn't say that. I said that there are challenges, because we do know that there are challenges, and let's just be frank about this. I mean, for instance, I've been in the Gulf for the last week or so. I see more burqas in my home city of London than I have seen in the Gulf in recent days, certainly here in Doha. Now, I can't say I'm delighted by the sight of more and more burqas in London. Do I feel any hatred of the people who wear them? Of course not. Of course not. But I can't say I'm elated by it. And definitely there are times I think, you know, what percentage of burqas in this area becomes like not that pleasant for everyone else?
But again, is it all down to burqas? Because again, you're not asking people with other traditions whether they care about the sight of people drinking alcohol or showing up in bikinis. Again, it's a very
we could in Britain
Western-centric viewpoint.
I'm not. I have to say, you're going to bark up the wrong tree if you think you're going to persuade a Brit that we should stop drinking alcohol because of people arriving in our country. I mean, that's not going to happen. These things are all a bit of give and take.
You bring your own traditions that don't quite fit with theirs.
Well,
they don't.
Yeah, there are, as I said, and before we got all confrontational, which you did from the get-go, I said what the problem is here is that these things are all rubbing against each other. And in that situation, you have to work out what things you're willing to give up, which things you're willing to compromise on, and which ones you're not. You're not going to persuade the Brits to massively change their culture, but let me just make the point. Every single society has certain aspects of it it doesn't want to give up. This one will. In Qatar, this one will. Everyone does. So please don't try to make this a kind of bigoted European thing. That would be a very, very dishonest way to. That would be a very dishonest way to represent
Just answer this question
debate.
directly if you can. Which of your values are you most afraid to lose? Which ones are most threatened by the arrival of refugees?
Freedom of speech. It's the first one. Oh, you think that's not a problem?
I mean,
you think that's not a problem?
But
you think? Sorry, no. Let me pick up on that. Let me pick up on that. It's very easy to snigger. It's very easy to snigger about this until you've had friends shot in a newspaper office. It's very easy to laugh about that until it's happened to people you know.
And again, I don't know, it just seems very hypocritical that she questions how come the British people can't see the values that, you know, these immigrants or refugees are bringing to their culture, yet the opposite couldn't be said. It's not like the British could bring their values and all that stuff to these places and they would be accepted. So, you know, again, the full interview with the Ulua there, he talks about how, you know, this isn't just a fight for Israel, but it's a fight for human rights, freedoms, democracy, stuff like that. I highly recommend you watch the whole interview with him. I'll even link this one with Douglas Murray from Doha. The host was very confrontational with him, but I think it was a pretty good one. But as always, you guys let me know what you guys think about this. A little bit of a longer video, but you know, a lot to cover. Please let me know in the comment section below what you guys thought about this, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.